Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake, joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. We're here to talk the portal on this episode. We are semifinal boys, but we're going to talk about talent acquisition this podcast because the transfer portal has officially opened. It's open now for 2 weeks. Now that's just 2 weeks in which players can jump in. Once they're in the portal, they can take as long as they want to decide where they want to go. But you got 2 weeks to jump in, and that starts today. And remember, this year it's just one portal window, so there is no spring portal window. So you gotta do your business now in a condensed manner. We'll get into it all later. Miami's got to navigate this situation as they're still playing in a college football playoff. Good problem to have, but it is something you got to navigate. All right, before we jump into things, Gabby, we got to highlight our sponsors. We'll start with Canes Connection. That, of course, is Miami's collective. They do such a great job of assisting and supporting Miami in this talent acquisition space. Miami's roster, the more you watch these college football playoff games, Gabby, the more it's clear that Miami has one of the best rosters in the country. We kind of already knew that. I think after that midseason hiccup, maybe there was some questions to be asked in that regard, but Miami got back on track, and yeah, it's a top 5 roster in the sport. And Canes Connection plays a huge role in that. So go support those guys at canesconnection.com. Also, our guy, Nick Musarino at Musarino Law. If you've been injured in any type of accident, whether that's slip and fall, boating, trucking accident, Uber Lyft accident, car accident, hit up our guy Nick Musarino at 561-960-9870 or visit his website at flinjury.law. Loves the Canes. Happy to talk Canes with you as well. And Gabby, I know we have a new sponsor we've added to the podcast as well.
Yeah, David, want to shout out Aaron Pascal Realty. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in South Florida, you should know that Aaron Pascal with Keller Williams, both those guys are local born and raised, huge Hurricanes fans, listeners of Through the Smoke, big fans of the show, and they know Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach inside and out. You can grab a free home value report or a quick market update with either, with Aaron Pascal or Keller Williams. Call or text them at 305-497-5773 or visit apascal.kw.com. Really appreciate Aaron Pascal and his realty team being on board here for the 2026 calendar year.
Yeah, and of course, all our sponsors' information will be in the show notes. So go check it out if you want to circle back and support those guys. Okay. Gabby, before we dive into the portal, I think it's fair to kind of just share our first impressions on Miami's semifinal opponent. It's, of course, going to be in the Fiesta Bowl, Arizona, Thursday, January. I'm losing track of my days. January
January
9th,
8th. January 8th.
Interesting matchup with Ole Miss, right? Ole Miss
Yeah.
won a fun back and forth game against Georgia. Look, when I was watching that game, Gabby, and just where I'm at with this opponent, I viewed them both as favorable matchups to Miami in different ways. I thought,
Yep.
Miami could go toe to toe with Georgia. I feel like Miami is a better Georgia, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Ole Miss, I feel like presents an styles make fights, that cliche. I think it reigns true in this particular matchup because Ole Miss is going to test Miami with their style offensively. They play at a fast pace. Their quarterback gets the ball out quick, which we know is the best way to neutralize Miami's pass rush. He can also buy time and extend plays when he needs to as well. To me, Gabby, he's the best quarterback relative to the system that can give Miami issues that the Hurricanes have faced this year. So it's going to be an interesting contrast of styles where Miami wants to pound you, wants to grind you out. Ole Miss kind of wants to play fast and get you tired and wear you down that way through the course of the game. I feel good about Miami matching up with Ole Miss, but I'm curious how this matchup hits you just first impression. Ole Miss is the opponent.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. Trinidad Chambliss was super impressive in that win over Georgia, and again, at very different teams, right? And I think we kind of saw the styles makes fights kind of play out in that Georgia Ole Miss game because Georgia is kind of like a line of scrimmage based team, 12 personnel type. They go on to kind of run it and pound it, a lot of tight end passing game and, kind of Zach Branch on the screens. And Ole Miss had two receivers go for over 120 yards, and they're willing to kind of move fast offensively. They also have a really talented running back in Keywan Lacey, who had basically 100 yards rushing and two touchdowns, and he's been a machine for them this season. This is kind of like a Lane Kiffin offense, so it's fast and it's impressive. And Charlie Weiss Jr. is going to be Lane Kiffin's offensive coordinator at LSU, so it's just that style of offense. And again, I think it's a different type of game than I think Miami's seen in either of these past two situations where I think they have just a big group of a big strong supporting cast, good tight end, plenty of good wide receivers. They got a ton of them in the portal, and those guys have performed well. And then on the defensive side, I mean, I think their defense is okay. I think this is probably the weakest defense that Miami has probably seen as far as just like these
Hmm.
playoff games between Texas A&M and Ohio State. And Miami's done a pretty good job of running the football, and I don't think Ole Miss does the best job of stopping the run. So I think it's going to be to me this matchup super interesting as far as just like who's going to dictate the terms of the tempo and
Right.
the style and the way in the game flow. Because if Miami can kind of ball control and run the ball well and be efficient on offense and kind of drag Ole Miss into deep waters, like I think that's the way Miami kind of has to win this game. If it kind of becomes shootouty, I'm not sure that I want that in
I do
against Ole
think,
Miss.
though, I agree with you. Like, shootout leans to Ole Miss's favor. I do think Miami can score 30 plus on this team, though.
Yeah, they can. This is not like an A&M defense or Ohio State defense at all. This is,
Right.
I think, it's more parallel to like what Miami kind of saw throughout the year in the ACC. And that's
Yes.
not like I'm not saying that in a way that like knocks Ole Miss. Like they have talent. I mean, their defensive front, Centarian Perkins, the Eccles kid up in the middle is a really talented interior lineman. They got Cam Franklin, Prince Will. I don't know how to say his last name, but like they got talent up front. I think on the back end, like the back seven to me is just like okay,
Yeah, I agree. And we'll move on to the portal, but
yeah,
like when I think about this game right now, I mean, got a lot more studying to do on Ole Miss. I think of two on offense. To me, run the ball if you're Miami, and I think they can. On defense, look, I think that defensive line's always going to be there in terms of like the ability to impact any game. But to me, like this is a game where you need good play from the corners, from the secondary in general, but specifically the corners, because Ole Miss rolls 4, 5 pass catchers without much of a drop off. And Miami's corner depth is going to be tested a little bit here during this playoff run with OJ Frederick getting a little banged up at the end of the or in the middle of the Ohio State game. Damari Brown's status, we'll see how he is, when the Fiesta Bowl game is here. But Miami's going to need their corners, to me, to hold up because, Trinidad Chambliss, again, will test them in the quick game, and he's not afraid to push the ball deep, extend plays, push the ball deep, etc. So it's going to be a fun matchup stylistically. Have you seen, last thing, because this is interesting, have you seen the stuff with their coaching staff?
yeah. Is that's real, right? I saw Ross Dellinger reported that some of those guys might have to go back to LS, like kind of transition full time to LSU at this point.
So Lane Kiffin's kind of holding them to their feet to the fire in terms of like I think a lot of their offensive staff did not
Yeah,
travel back to Ole Miss, right?
yeah,
After the game. Because the portal's now open and Lane Kiffin wants them on LSU's campus with the portal open.
yeah. That's
And
interesting.
Lane Kiffin's definitely that type of guy that is going to
Yeah.
stick it to Ole
I wonder
Miss.
if like contractually, like if it's like January 1st is like the beginning of
Yeah,
their contract with like actually being at
sure.
LSU.
Yes, I think
So
I think
if it
essentially their contract already is. It's just
yeah.
is Lane Kiffin willing to loan them out, so to speak, during this time? I don't think he is. Lane Kiffin's that kind of guy where
Yeah.
he's not about that.
And this is kind of I think it's gone kind of for him this has probably gone far enough, right? As far as just
Agreed.
like like, hey, this team is legitimately making a national championship run. Like Lane Kiffin looks kind of silly at this point
Yep.
because like you left LSU for a better chance to play for a national championship, and this team is one game away from playing for a national championship.
Agreed.
So I think if you're Lane Kiffin right now, I mean, just the salty nature of it is like
Yes,
this needs to end now.
I agree.
And
And
still, like this, and I think this Ole Miss team's kind of playing with. Look, up to this point, I was rooting for Ole Miss. Like, I kind of love to watch them come together and play hard. And like, this was really cool just to kind of stick it to Lane Kiffin. But like, this is if that coaching staff is legitimately like torn apart. I mean,
that's tough. That's a
yeah, it's
tough
hard
deal.
to you're gonna have a lot of inexperienced people or just like people who haven't been in place with this roster to game plan for I think probably the best line of
Yeah.
scrimmage team they've played all year.
Yep.
So they have good players and that always matters, but there's a lot of other factors that kind of go into this.
All right,
It's
we'll
interesting.
discuss Ole Miss more here in the coming days on future podcasts. But let's talk about the portal now, Gabby, and just like a 25 minute conversation where essentially we set the table because a lot of this is fluid. A lot of this, frankly, is hard to unearth in terms of information and intel. I think we are definitely on track with a lot of what's going on from a Miami perspective. Um, but I think I want to frame this conversation is let's go through the positions where we think Miami has interest. If we know some players that Miami has interest in at that position, let's discuss it. And then if there's players that we think might make sense at a position, let's discuss it. So, I think the place to start obviously is quarterback, right? And we definitely know that Miami has its eye on one player in particular. So the floor is yours to explain the quarterback situation with Miami's portal pursuit.
Yeah, David. I think we've been pointing in the direction of Cincinnati's Brendan Sorsby as a potential top option. I think at this point it's probably fair to call him the top option. Um, just amongst the quarterbacks that are in the portal. And as we record this podcast, David, there's been reports about Brandon Sorsby visiting LSU and Texas Tech. I think that
Hmm.
Texas Tech visit starts here on Friday. I guess LSU is coming right after. Again, I think Miami's still a school that should be in the discussion for Brendan Sorsby. There's obviously, I think we need to talk
Explain
about this
why
too.
Miami is not named.
Right.
Explain that.
I think what Miami fans need to understand right now is like this is a very unique situation, right? Just to preface this conversation, this is a very unique situation where Miami's preparing for a semifinal and having to navigate the transfer portal. There's naturally a lot of sensitivity in situations like this, especially when it comes to quarterback, because there's obviously an offense that's still being put together and structured for a major game. There's a quarterback room that's being discussed. That's being, again, they need these guys for this run, and then also just the distraction that comes with quarterback news to the program as it
Yes.
applies to recruiting and
Distraction for any position group.
right,
If you're a young nickel and it's
yeah,
being reported on that, hey, Miami's interested in this veteran nickel, that's a distraction leading up to the biggest game of the
yeah.
last 20 plus years.
Right. So I think all of that I think everything that kind of comes out with all this stuff needs to be kind of put through this filter first of just like, okay, how does this impact Miami? Why isn't Miami mentioned with this team that we thought that they were kind of involved with? So I think that that's kind of the caveat with the Brendan Sorsby situation. I would just keep that in mind throughout this quarterback process. Yes, Texas Tech and LSU are legitimate contenders. Miami is too. But what that looks like for Miami as far as drawing him to campus or
Yeah.
anything public like that, I think is just it's difficult to kind of place all this stuff. But I think to be clear, Brendan Sorsby is the top quarterback target for the Hurricanes at this point, and he should still be considered
And he is
uh,
interested in Miami.
definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, we're not predicting like Miami's landing Brendan Sorsby. There's still a process that has to play out. But my impression is that this is primarily a Miami and LSU battle. I would say with the portal opening, I'd probably give the edge to LSU if I'm
Yeah.
being honest. So Miami's got some work to do. I do think Miami's going to get a visit eventually, and I think Miami's, had plenty of conversations with Sorsby's representation. So, yes, they are not named in these initial reports, but Miami's definitely one of the teams there involved with Sorsby. Um, Anything else to say with this situation? I think, it it definitely has. It's become, widely accepted that he's the top arm in the portal. I think, as it opens, we'll see if other maybe unexpected guys jump in and that changes. But I think Miami is going all in on the top arm, and
Yep.
I think this is the right play. Now, Miami LSU, that's a big time battle for the top arm in the portal, especially considering now Lane Kiffin's at LSU. But I think it's the right play, and I think if Miami was fortunate enough to land a player like Sorsby, I think they would definitely be considered a national championship contender once again. Anything else on quarterback, on Sorsby? Uh, Anything else to pass on there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we need to discuss, like there's obviously like I think Sam Levitt is officially in the portal now, like whether that's an option or not. I think it's someone to maybe just monitor and keep in mind, right? I think he got linked to Kentucky here on Friday as the portal opens, but I think Sam Levitt may be just another kind of quarterback that's in now that I think is probably worth just having a discussion about.
Yeah, I think so. The reason why maybe he has to go to Kentucky, and this isn't like intel from Miami necessarily, this is like industry-wide intel. I think when teams start digging on the character of Sam Levitt, the feedback doesn't come back rosy. And so I think that's maybe what's limiting the Sam Levitt market in general and why, it does sound like he's going to have to go to Kentucky. So I think from a talent standpoint, from a way he plays standpoint, I think 100% yes, Miami was interested. And definitely, again, went through a vetting process of Sam Levitt. But does the character stuff check out the way Miami and every other school who dug in on him? Does it check out the way you'd want it? I think there was some question marks there. So, until he's officially committed and signed, yes, I think he's a name to maybe, less than 10% chance, maybe keep an eye on. Um, but yeah, that's what I would say on Sam Levitt. I think there's others out there too, but the guy I would say to focus on for now is Brendan Sorsby. Like
Yeah.
if you're going to lock on some news for a transfer portal quarterback, Brendan Sorsby's the guy you got to lock in on from a Miami perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to categorize the quarterback situation.
And look, if there's new names that we need to pass along, we will do that. But for now, Brendan Sorsby's the name to know. All right, next position. Let's go to receiver because that's a position where I think Miami would like to add maybe an outside receiver that's proven to balance the passing attack, maybe even bring some sort of leadership to the position group. Take some of the attention off of Malachi Tony. Um, what do we know here?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple guys. I think first of all, just getting an outside wide receiver is something that I think the program is thoroughly exploring. Uh, like you mentioned, David, and I think we've kind of seen this. If we're being honest, I think we've kind of seen this play out in the playoff, right? Like it seems like Malachi Tony has kind of become like the key for a lot of these defenses, and limiting him and containing him has kind of just become a focal point of some of these defenses. And I think Miami's pass game has been relatively limited as far as just like any explosiveness or, I think CJ Daniels, stepped up and had a great game against Ohio State and he did his job. But I think otherwise, I do think that Miami needs to get some more outside wide receiver support. There's young, talented players in the room, but I think just like a guy that's proven on the outside with some size and some explosive potential is something that Miami should definitely consider, especially if you're in the market for a top arm and you want to be more explosive on offense. I think that getting someone in that mold makes a ton of sense. I mean, a couple names that, I think to track, I would say, I think everyone's interested in Cam Coleman, the,
Hmm.
top ranked receiver in the transfer portal. Auburn transfer. He's best friends with current Miami freshman Dalen Upshaw. And look, I think the market for him is obviously insanely high, right? And
He's
it's
going to be expensive. Yeah.
extremely expensive. So is that a situation that you explore? And look, I think Miami has inquired. I think Miami has
Hmm.
expressed interest, of course, but I think you kind of have to weigh like the cost versus like maybe value.
Hmm.
And receivers are expensive regardless. So I think you just have to consider how much you're willing to allocate for that. And I think Miami's willing to spend on the right situation. It just depends how a lot of these things work out. I think a couple other names, David, to track Terrell Anderson at an NC State transfer. He's played 2 years for the Wolfpack. He had a great season in 2025, 39 catches. I believe he had over 600 yards or close
Hmm.
to 600 yards, 5 touchdowns. I think he averaged over 16 yards per catch. That's a big play outside receiver that could potentially make sense for Miami that I think they're interested in. I haven't really heard anything like super concrete here, but I think like Omarion Miller from Colorado is someone that Miami could potentially be interested in as well. He is a, chunk receiver, a
Hmm.
big time outside,
Kind of like a power receiver.
yeah,
Like he's got some juice, but man, he wins one-on-one
yeah.
downfield with his strength, if
Yeah,
that
he's
makes
just a
sense.
big, thick receiver out
Yeah.
of Louisiana. So again, maybe just watch LSU if he decides he wants to kind of go back home. But I think he's someone that would make a ton of sense for Miami in general as a potential outside receiver. So I think those are a few names to
And
track at this point.
in general, the receiver market is pretty big, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's that's
it's
that's how I feel
there's
about it.
depth. There's depth there.
Yeah, I think you can find value. Like I think you can
Yeah.
find value in the transfer portal. Um, at receiver right now, just because there's a lot of guys in there who have like played and produced. And again, you don't always need like sort of a Sunday guy. You need a guy who you feel like can just make plays and
Right.
rack up, be a problem, just be another outlet, another answer for you on offense. So there's a lot of guys that I think I would feel comfortable with, or a good chunk of guys I'd feel comfortable with at this point at receiver.
And I like Miami's young receivers. Like I think they got some nice talent.
Yeah.
But I think one thing to keep in mind, just in general, there's one portal window, right? And so what your roster is on February 1st is essentially what it's going to be for the season. You don't get to have the spring football evaluation time of like, okay, we can really see our next year's roster on the field. And yeah, we'd like to go get an outside receiver. So I think you got to play the probability game a little bit of like yeah, like I think Josh Moore's going to be really good, right? But sometimes I think it's good to bring a little competition into the room that has gone out and produced at the college level as well. And that doesn't necessarily mean Josh Moore doesn't get opportunities in his own right, just as an example, right?
Right.
So, um, you know, Miami did not add Keelan Marion until the spring window, right? So that's an example of a guy who, look, not an NFL type of talent, probably, but a guy that's really helped Miami, I think, this year. And I think Miami feels like that's been a great move, getting a Keelan Marion. So,
Definitely.
and keep that in mind, I think, with all these positions, because yes, Miami recruits well, and they want to have their homegrown talent ultimately be the starters and the main contributors. Um, but you also can't like cross your fingers, hope and wish that guys develop and produce, and then they don't, and then you're stuck with bad players.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
100%.
Or
Especially
players
coming
who
off of
aren't ready
a
yet.
right, especially coming off of a run like this. Like I think
Yeah.
this changes. I mean, again, probably a different conversation for a different podcast, but I think Miami should go into this portal window as with their chests kind of puffed out a little bit, like, hey, like we have a chance to play for a national championship. Like this is a great situation, and like they should maximize this opportunity to go into the portal and find really good players who make the team better and help them do this again next year, go on a similar run next year.
All right, tight end. What do we need to know there?
Yeah, tight end. I don't think Miami's going to be like top players in the tight end market as far as just
Right.
like some of the elites. Like I mean, it seems like Luke Reynolds is going to Virginia Tech, but like I think the expectation was that he would have been like the darling of the transfer portal window as far as just like
He's a Penn
commanding the
State
most. He's the
transfer,
Penn
right?
State transfer,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. He was kind of like mini Tyler Warren in this preseason as far as just like the expectations, and obviously Penn State kind of flopped, and he didn't perform to that level, but he's a really talented player. There's other guys like I don't think Miami's going to be even like in like the Brody Foley conversation as
Right.
far as just like top
Tulsa.
tier. Yeah, or the Tulsa kid, or even like a Hayden Hansen, out of Florida. Like I don't even think they're going to be in like that tier of
Sounds like
conversation.
Oklahoma with him, right?
Yeah, I've heard Oklahoma. I heard Texas yesterday.
Okay.
So maybe it could be
So he's
Oklahoma,
going to
but
be
I also
expensive.
right, exact.
Yeah.
Essentially, what we're saying is he's going to be pricey. So yeah, I heard Texas. I mean, maybe Oklahoma could be it too. So I think that's a different tier of tight end. I
Yeah.
don't. And look, I think Miami feels confident in Luka Gilbert. I think that there's also some discussion about just like this fifth year rule, David. I don't know if you've heard anything about this, but that's kind of some stuff I kind of started hearing yesterday was just like there's a chance that some rulings might get passed or that changed some eligibility stuff. And like there's a chance maybe Alex Bauman can come back for next year. Like I think that that's on the table. I don't think they're operating as if he will, but I think if some stuff gets passed, like maybe. But in general, I think it's going to be more of like the 87s or 88s in the transfer portal rankings if you're
Yeah.
looking at
A blocking
24/7.
tight end
Right,
is
a guy
kind
who
of
can
what they
be on
want.
exactly, a guy who maybe
Yeah.
gives you some pass catching ability, but someone that could also attach to the line of scrimmage and give you some and I also think there's confidence in Luka Gilbert as far as just like the
I
where
like
he's
Luca a
developing.
lot.
And I think next year they expect Luca to kind of be one of the guys.
Hmm.
So anything that they bring in, I don't think would be like someone to like move Luca off of that trajectory. I think it would be someone to complement the room, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And it's worth noting Brock Schott has
Yeah.
decided to enter the portal.
Yeah.
So,
And I think he's going to Indiana.
oh, good for him.
Yeah.
Um, Center. So, this is a position Miami's dipped in every year, right? Since Mario Cristobal's
Yep.
arrived. To me, I think they need to do it again. Go get a center, a proven center.
Yeah.
What's your impression on the center situation?
Yeah, I don't really I feel like it's something that they should explore. I'm sure it's something they may explore. Um, I think the right decision would be going into the transfer portal at center and bringing in a guy. I also think it depends what the market kind of provides too.
Yeah.
To me, David, I know we've talked about this. It doesn't seem like there's like a definite
So far, there's not an
right.
obvious
Yeah, there doesn't
answer.
seem to be, and I feel like the other past years there's been kind of like the obvious like this guy's coming here. Like Matt Lee when he hit, it was like all right, kind of
Yeah.
we felt kind of knew he was coming to Miami. Zach Carpenter, I think it was more up and down, but I think we had a good idea he was coming to Miami. James Brockermeyer was like, this kid's coming straight to Miami.
Yeah.
And this year, it doesn't seem like there's that guy, at least not yet. So, I'm curious how they feel internally about it, as far as whether they have someone ready, or they feel like there's someone there that can snap, whether that's SJ Alifai or if they do explore the transfer.
Somebody that can snap is an interesting way of phrasing it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely is. Um, yeah, but again, I
Also,
don't love the
Ryan
options.
Rodriguez, does he get another year or
Yeah,
not?
maybe
So,
he gets another year, and if he gets another year, then maybe he's the center in
yeah.
2026. So I think that's on the table too. Um, so I think you just kind of got to see how this situation plays out.
Yeah. I also wonder about like a Max Buchanan. They don't have him at center now, but like, can
No.
he do it?
Hmm.
Um, just one of those interior guys. Do you feel like you can move them to center?
Yeah.
Anyways, how about defensive end? Miami's obviously going to have to replace a lot of firepower there.
Yep.
They also have a lot of very good developing young talent there. But I think it's worth going and sprinkling in one guy at defensive end as well.
Yeah, David. I've as we've been recording this, I posted a nugget on InsideU.com. There's a name that's kind of emerging on my radar here in the early afternoon hours on Friday. Gardner Webb, edge Antonio O'Barry. So I guess he's a graduate student. In 2 years at Gardner Webb, posted 9.5 sacks, 16.5 tackles for loss, and like 79 quarterback pressures. He's currently on a visit to Ohio State, and talking to some people connected to Barry, it sounds like a visit to Miami is potentially on the table as soon as this weekend. So I think it's on the table that he transitions from Ohio State to Miami. and takes a look at the Hurricanes. So Miami's definitely in the market for a defensive end. And look, I think this is someone that kind of fits the kind of the criteria, an older guy physically gifted at 6'6", 240, is a veteran, has played football, has been productive at Gardner Webb. It seems like major schools are interested. And again, I think he complements kind of the young up and coming pass rushers just to provide some veteran depth and potential production. So I think that this is a potentially interesting name to track, David. I don't know if you know much about him,
I don't.
but I think it's an interesting potential target.
He fits the profile of what they should go out and get. Because look, Miami's got, I mean, Armando Blunt to me is a swing defensive lineman. Like,
Hmm.
and I think that's the best role for him. Marquise Lightfoot to me is really coming strong. Needs to keep getting stronger,
Yep.
adding mass. But I like his development this year. Hayden Lowe, I'm excited about what he could look like next year when he returns from his injury. I know they like Herbert Scroggins, right,
Yep.
as a
He's
pass rusher.
playing. He
Right,
played against Ohio State.
right. So, that's a good starting point. I think you add one more. As we see, in this these seasons are long, man, when you
Yep.
get to the college football playoff. And so you need a roster, you need depth. And so going to the portal, adding a veteran defensive end makes a lot of sense. I would say the same about D tackle.
Yep.
Um, and, Miami's definitely going to have to replace David Blay, who has no more eligibility remaining. To me, like you need someone like that, Gabby, like a
Hmm.
guy that can just plug up the run, right? I expect Ahmad Moten to come back. Um, Justin Scott's taken a nice step forward, and unfortunately, they lost Dante Simpson to the portal. Um, but they're bringing in Keyshawn Stansel, who I think they're going to have to depend on to play true
Yep.
freshman snaps on a rotational basis. But they need another D tackle to me.
Yeah, I think they definitely need another defensive tackle. I'm curious again what the defensive tackle situation looks like because look, this is another one where anyone that's built like David Blay comes at a premium, right? I think those defensive tackles are very expensive.
Yeah,
If you feel like Armando Blunt is a potential guy that can kind of kick inside and help you there, like what that
that's where
looks
I
like.
think he's best.
Yeah,
But I don't know. He can also play on the edge a little bit too.
yeah, for sure,
I don't
for
know
sure.
body type wise, like how much bigger can he get, do you think?
No, I mean I think he's probably I think it's about what is he at now, like 250 or so?
260-ish maybe?
260. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's fine. 260, 265. I feel like this is where I think this is probably what he's maxed out at. Like, I think this is about what he is, but I think he could still be a disruptive
Yeah.
interior defensive lineman, and I think you can play him on the edge, and he can give you some of that too. But yeah, I'm curious what the defensive tackle market is going to end up looking like. Like, I think that that's a position Miami definitely needs to target in the portal. I think they will. It's just a matter of what kind of becomes available and what they like and what they want. Like, do you kind of go productive G5 type of guy with that has some size, like David Blay, that kind of worked out? Like maybe you don't have someone that's quite that big, like you kind of go interior, another kind of like interior pass rush type, like a 6'2", 6'3", 285 pound guy. Like that's what kind of intrigues me about this Ball State kid, Darren Conley. I mean, 51 quarterback pressures from the interior, respectable against the run. He's kind of like an interior pass rusher, but he gives you some stuff there. But I think you would lack some mass outside of Ahmad Moten and Justin Scott. So I'm not sure if that's a direction that they want to go. Um, but yeah, I think defensive tackle has to be a priority as far as just getting one of these guys. Like, but what's telling to me about their approach at defensive tackle is like John Walker, right? He's a UCF
Right.
transfer. They recruited him out of high school, and it doesn't seem to me like Miami's in that market at all, is in the market for John
Right.
Walker at all. And he's a 6'4", 314-pound type guy. So if they're not
Expensive though.
involved, exactly. So it's just like to me, it tells me that not that. Okay, this isn't about not having money or not having the funds. This is just about a different. This roster is constructed different because this team is actually good, so you have to pay your team, and then it's just about like what are you willing to spend at some of these certain positions? Like like where are you trying to go with this? especially if you're retaining an Ahmad Moten, retaining Justin Scott, all these defensive linemen. So to me, I think them not going after John Walker tells me that they're maybe looking more into like the G5 type of ranks and a guy that could maybe come up and help them. That's a veteran that's done it. Again, this is just me talking. I don't know this.
How about linebacker? I think, Miami's going to need to sprinkle one
Yep.
guy in at linebacker.
Yeah, at least. I think that there's a couple names that have kind of come up on my radar again, just as names to track, right? I think one of them is San Diego State linebacker Owen Chambliss. I mean, if you don't know about that San Diego State defense, they were one of the best in the country statistically, obviously playing in the Mountain West. But I think they allowed like under 10 points per game. They were very good. And Owen Chambliss led that team with 110 tackles, had 9.5 tackles for loss and 4 sacks. And according to his Pro Football Focus grades, was also pretty strong in coverage. So I think that's an intriguing option. I think Kamari House from North Carolina. This will be his third school in 3 years. He began his career at Washington, where he kind of performed well as a freshman and then transferred to North Carolina. Was there for 1 year. I think he had like 70 something tackles for them. As back in the transfer portal, I think he could be a potential answer. Um, Another one is Oklahoma's Kobe McKenzie. He's a veteran who's been at Oklahoma for 4 seasons, 6'2", 235 pounder or so. I think he's definitely someone that I think he's definitely a name to track that I've kind of thrown on the board a couple times at this point. I think I mean, then you got like the kind of top end of the linebackers, right? Like the Rasheem Biles out of Pitt, who I think people are linking to Ohio State. He is an All-American, All-ACC linebacker who's probably going to be the highest paid linebacker in the portal. I think he's originally from like the Columbus, Ohio area, so I think that might be a fit. I mean, we'll see who else he kind of explores, but I think that's going to be an interesting. I think he's the best linebacker in the portal too. And another name to bring to the table is Cole Sullivan. He was a linebacker at uh, at Michigan this past season, and Miami actually hosted him as a recruit. He's a 6'3", 230 pounder. He played 331 snaps for them this season. Again on that Michigan defense, he started in the back half of the season, but has been a role player up to that point. So I think he's a name to potentially track at linebacker as well.
And then nickel. Nickel's going to be a big one
Yep.
for Miami. They got to replace, again, Keontae Scott. Big time nickel. Big time addition through the portal last year. Uh, let's group safety in this too, right? Because I
Yeah.
think it's pretty interchangeable in
Yep.
Miami's defense, nickel safety. Um, who are some names to know here?
Yeah, I think a couple of guys to know. Sharif Denson, he's a Florida transfer. He's maybe primarily a nickel. He played nickel at Florida. He's a veteran. He'll be a senior in 2026. So he's experienced in the SEC. He's a physical, kind of good tackler, good against the run, a little suspect in coverage, but he's someone that fits the bill. Omar Thornton from Boston College, I think is my personal favorite nickel option, David. I don't know if you agree with that, but he's kind of like a playmaking, kind of head on fire type of defensive back who is originally from South Florida, played at American Heritage in Plantation, was teammates with Xavier Lucas and Malachi Tony. And he had 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. I think he forced 4 fumbles at Boston College too. So he's kind of like a playmaking nickel, which Keontae Scott kind of is too. And I think that he's a potential good fit for that safety sort of nickel hybrid role that Miami's kind of carved out. A couple other just like interesting names, right? Like Coy Parrish, who's top 10 player in the portal right now, a Minnesota transfer. He was kind of like the jewel of Minnesota's 2024 recruiting class. At that point, Corey Heatherman was the defensive coordinator at Minnesota. He started Coy Parrish as a true freshman. He became a freshman All-American. He intercepted 5 passes in Corey Heatherman's defense. So, curious if he's open to a return to Corey Heatherman's defense where he performed so well. We'll see. He's going to be extremely coveted and probably quite expensive. So I think that he's a super intriguing option, but we'll see where Miami kind of stacks in as far as just his overall market. I think a couple other guys. Tal Johnson at Utah. He was a starting safety at Utah. He entered the transfer portal like half an hour ago. I think he's a potentially interesting name. Over 2,000 career snaps at Utah. A multi-year starter is someone that could potentially help them out. And then ECU transfer. What's this kid's name? I had his name right in front of me, and then I moved it along. Um, Jamar Lee Riddle, he was a first team All AAC safety at ECU, again, someone who's kind of played in the box and at free safety. He's an interesting name too that I think might be worth tracking. King Mack is a South Florida native who's in the portal. I think people are linking him to Tennessee because Penn State's defensive coordinator or defensive backs coach is now going to Tennessee. And so I think that there's a natural connection there. But he is a South Florida native who had his best year of his career at Penn State as a junior. So maybe one to kind of have on track too. But I would expect, a nickel and another safety. Like I think at least two defensive backs. David, honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if Miami's in the cornerback market to some extent too.
Okay. Uh, if you were ranking the most important positions, we're going top three. Miami needs to hit home runs in the portal relative to whatever a home run is at that given
Yeah,
position group, right?
right.
Um, Number one, obviously quarterback.
Yeah, I would say quarterback.
Two is
Uh,
what?
Two, man, I think outside wide receiver is pretty important.
Okay.
I don't know if I think maybe I'll get some pushback on that, but I think Miami needs another weapon to complement Malachi Tony because I think it makes Malachi Tony better, and I think it makes this offense as a whole better. So I would argue outside wide receiver is super important.
And
Um,
then what?
yeah, I think either linebacker or nickel. Like I think both those are really, really important. I wouldn't be like if you pushed back and said linebacker and nickel over receiver, I guess I wouldn't really push back on that either. But I both think both linebacker and nickel are probably right there for me as far as third most important.
Okay.
What about you? Where you at with it?
Um, I think I'd go defense for two and three.
Yeah,
I think I'd probably go edge, number two.
yeah,
I'd probably go, oh man, I probably would go nickel, number three.
yeah,
Nickel safety, whatever, however you want
right.
to split that up.
Yeah.
Um, I just think, man, we're seeing your line of
Hmm.
scrimmage needs to be on point.
Yep.
And we're also seeing you need four guys that you can trust in that nickel safety rotation. So
Yeah.
Miami returns Bryce Fitzgerald. Miami returns Poiser, right? We assume. And so to me, that means you got to go get two nickels or two nickel safeties. So I just think, and that position in this Corey Heatherman defense, I think is very important. Nickel slash safety. So, but outside receiver, definitely. I mean, if Miami goes out and gets a big time quarterback and a productive outside receiver, I think the pieces
Yeah.
are there for Miami to have, a top 20 offense again. So, um, it's all important. Honestly, like where I'm at, Gabby, like they don't need the volume because Miami's taken close to what, 20 every year under
Yeah.
Cristobal.
Yep.
To me, like you need 8 to 10, but you need, you know,
8 to 10 guys who can play.
7 to 9 of them who are starting.
Yeah.
Does that
Agreed.
make sense?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I have before we get out of here, David. So if assuming Markel Bell goes pro too, would you argue that
No,
Miami should you feel good about the tackle situation?
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you put
Because there's some
McCoy out
intriguing
there.
tackle. I think there's some intriguing tackles in the transfer portal right now.
I think you let I think you let other people overpay for them. I
Yeah.
think I think you trust Matthew McCoy out there. To me, man, Sampson's really taking a step
Yeah,
forward. I think
Samson.
he's an
I think
interior guy,
yeah,
but
he's interesting. He's getting better. He's playing really good football right now.
and then Jackson Cantwell to me is your starting right tackle. Maybe he's your starting left tackle. I don't know,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
you know, I feel good about Miami's homegrown development at
Yeah.
tackle
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. Center, I think If there is one, they need to go get it. If not, I think personally you got to move someone into that center spot if they're going to go homegrown.
Yeah.
That's another discussion for another day. All right, we'll get out of here on that note. Appreciate everyone for listening. Go check out InsideU.com and look. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Miami's in the college football playoff semifinals. They're going to be playing for the Natty. This is happening. So now's a great time to jump on board. Go VIP today, 50% off annual subscription deal, and take advantage of that and go support our sponsors as well. And all their information is in the show notes. So appreciate everyone for listening. Until next time, take care.